What's up, guys? Welcome back. So we are getting into the editing portion of all this, which is kind of like low-key my favorite thing, because it is like when you're on set and you're doing photography and video in the restaurant, hospitality, bar space, it can sometimes be chaotic. A lot of people, a lot of voices, a lot of cooks in the kitchen, as they say, a lot of moving parts, and it can be overwhelming. Just high energy takes a lot of effort to get it all done sometimes. So then when you get home and you get to edit, that's your piece. That's your fun. You could throw a movie on in the background, a podcast, some music. You know, if you drink, you grab a cocktail and you could just sit and you just go through your images and you just make them really look amazing. You put your touch on it and you bring it to life so that it's ready for the client. So I'm just going to take you guys through a number of different types of editing techniques that I use, from the different tools I use in Photoshop to how to edit a raw file, just general settings I use for all images, and just really how I put my own touch on it. So we're going to start here. I'm going to use the exact same image for every single one of the tools that I use in Photoshop. This way, you guys really see how going one by one really will bring it all to life, as opposed to just, some images require certain tools in Photoshop more than others. And I want to be able to use an image like the one I have here of this tomahawk steak at this new club here in Fort Lauderdale as just a way to build it from this base image that was shot in RAW on my Canon R5C to where it gets to a point where I'm comfortable to deliver it. Now, this is going to be really cool because it's going to be basically like, here we have all the ingredients to make something amazing. No pun intended, since, this is obviously a chef cooking shot. And I'm going to take you from editing the raw settings all the way up to every single tool that I use in Photoshop to get it where I want. So obviously, first thing is when you open it up, you're going to be brought to the raw editing screen, which is this screen here. You will only get this screen if you shoot in RAW. I suggest shooting in RAW. It gives you the most capability to make edits. What RAW basically is it's recording enough information in the image so that you can adjust every aspect of the image as if you haven't even shot it yet. The exposure, the white balance, and so on. It gives you a lot more space to play with, adjusting all the different areas of an image that you can. So I'm going to just go through right here on the right side what I typically do to most images that are shot in a dark environment like this, where I'm using a flash. Right now, there's a single flash to the right here on a softbox on a 45-degree angle down. That's why it's lit here on the right. More shadows on the left. Again, on the glove, you could see lit on the right, shadows on the left because the light is right up here. So single light setup. And I'm going to take you through how we're going to make this tomahawk pop. And you got to remember, we really got to make it look good. This steak is about $280 at this restaurant, at this club. So this photo, if it does a really good job, can bring people in to buy this thing, which will make that place a lot of money. So this is why content in this industry is so important. That's another lesson. But let's jump in. So I'm just going to quickly show you guys. This is the steak. She's dusting some seasoning on it, right? She's slightly out of focus because we shot this basically at 3.2 aperture, which you can see right over here. It's nice in Photoshop. They show you the stats of the shot, right? So obviously I shot at a higher frame rate to capture this spice falling down. We're shooting at 38 millimeter because I wanted it to be really dramatic and wide. So the steak would be in focus and this would be out of focus in the background. And lower end ISO just because it was really bright. The kitchen was so dark, I really didn't have to raise it up too much to just highlight the steak itself. I wasn't really trying to highlight the background. So let's get in there. All right. So first thing I always do is I will adjust the exposure first. I go in order on the side here, this column here of options. I go through this entire page. I don't use any of the other ones because it's all you need to get something done here really well. So I first get the exposure where I want it, right about there. I always bring up the contrast just a little bit. Now the shadows, once you're in RAW, you have the ability to really expose a lot more. Now too much, and you're going to see stuff that you don't want to see, like whatever this bottle is here in the back. Too little, and you're losing a lot of details on the shirt. So if this is the center, I'll bring it up just slightly like that. And we're already, look at the difference already from just this first section, right? Awesome. Now it's going to come down here. Now, this is more of a creative decision. Do we want this to be a cooler image like that, which has its own sort of style and feel, Typically, it's not really what you want to do in a kitchen. In kitchen, you want warm, you want to make it look hot, you want to make it look fiery. In a situation like this, especially when it's a steak, and it's next to a grill, and it's being seasoned, about to be cooked, right? Cold doesn't really sell it. Now, there are tricks, like you could have the foreground be warm, background be cool. We'll go through that another time. That does make it pop. You know, if you have the ability to make the background slightly blue, but the steak slightly warm, that's like a cool effect that I use very often. We'll go into that when it comes to developing your own style. But I'll keep it sort of where it is now. What I will also almost always do is make it slightly more magenta. I find that when food has kind of a more greenish tint, it doesn't look as appetizing. Like, that's cool looking, right? This sort of matrixy looking shot here. But it's not, it doesn't fit the brand, and it's definitely not what's appetizing. Now, if that's the center, and you just go slightly more here, it gives it this sort of just warmer, richer tone. And from there, I go to saturation. Now, the trick about saturation is I find that red colors tend to be overpowering when you raise saturation. So sometimes I will lower the reds in the image and then just boost the saturation for the whole thing. But for now, let's just go with what we think looks good. Now, too much, obviously, that looks terrible. Too little, the food has no life in it. So for now, we're just going to keep it right here in the center. It's doing a good job, right? It's fine the way it is. It looks great. My number one tool that I will use in almost all my images, that I think is what people think is they're seeing when they say a Zach style image, is my clarity here. When you turn the clarity up here like this, it creates this sort of high definition feel. I'm going to bring it back down here so just so you guys can see here. When you bring this up, it really creates this high definition. You go too much and it's so much. You go little and it's terrible. But if you just go up a bit, that high definition look I love so much. You'll see it in all my images. So right now we've literally just gone through the lighting and the color. Let's see turning this on and off the difference. Off, on, off, on. I mean, it really just pops now. I think we'd even do a little bit more magenta here and maybe even a little cooler. A little too orange for me. There we go. A little bit more. Perfect. Now, let's move on down here. We're going to go here to the color mixer. Now, this is really cool. This is where you have the ability to adjust the luminance of every color in the image, the saturation of every color in the image, or the hue. If something's too red, you can make it a little bit more orange. If something is, too saturated, you could pull it back. So if the steak is red, I can pull this back and you lose all the color in the steak. You put it forward, you get too much red in the steak, right? So you can adjust in the image based on, is the mint too green? Is the lemon too yellow? Is the skin tones too orange? And so on. So in this image, there's a little too much orange going on. So I might bring it down just a little bit. A little too much red too. But like I said, the reds tend to overpower at fine images. So now, because I turn those down, I can actually bring the overall saturation up. Let's see where we are now. Before, after, before, after. Now, what I'll also do is the luminance is basically the exposure of the color. How bright that color is, you could say. So if I adjust the oranges here, see this? Too high, it's so bright, you almost lose the orange. Too low, and I don't even know what that is. So what I'll do is I'll slightly make the oranges pop in my images. That applies to skin tones, to food, anything. I find that it really works well. And in a photo that has red in it, I'll make that pop a little bit too. See this? That'll look especially good on things like strawberries or, raspberries, things like that. And those are really the only colors in the image. I mean, it's basically all tones of orange and red in this image, even on the wall here. So the next trick that I'll do is I will usually cool down the shadows and warm up the midtones. And what is that? Your midtones are your sort of, the highlights are going to be these bright areas of the image. Your shadows are obviously the shadows. Your midtones are going to be your midtones, for lack of a better description. But as you can see, if you adjust these shadows, it's going to affect, the darker tones in the image. You adjust the midtones, it's a whole different part of the image. See this? And this little goes a long way with this, just like spices. If you bring the shadows down just slightly cooler, like this, you see that? The difference between this and just cooling that off. See how the background just cooled off a little bit? Fantastic. I love that look. But then we got to bring these midtones up a bit warmer to compensate. Right? That is probably the most dramatic thing we've done so far to the image. Right? I mean, you turn that on and off, you got a whole different image. Look at that. Unbelievable. Now, the last things I'll do here typically is I will just reduce the noise. Typically, if we're shooting in a darker spice, darker space, you're going to have a little bit of noise showing up, depending also on the ISO capabilities of your camera. Mine's sort of in the mid-range of capability. If you're shooting with like a Sony a7S III, you're not going to have this problem as much. If you're shooting with a Canon T2i or, you know, a more starter beginner camera, you're going to have a big problem with this. So what you do is you can come down here to manual noise reduction, and you can reduce the luminance, look at that, and the color. And that just makes a huge difference. See, before, after. What a difference. Now really soften up the whole image. Look at that. Now, that was just editing in RAW. And look what we got here. I mean, oh my God. From where we started, this was the beginning. Let's see. If we reset to the original settings, reset to default, that was the original image. This is where we are now. Look at the difference between this, which was already a really great image, to this beautiful, strong, multiple toned image. I think it's great. And that is the capability of RAW. And that is basically all of the tools that I use in Camera Raw to get an image where I want it to be. And that is just the beginning. From there, you know, we can actually open this up and go through all of these tools here to get this image where we really want it, like brightening the exposure on certain parts of the image, or removing things from the image we don't think work, or, you know, changing where the eye goes in the image, adding different effects, and so on. But for now, that is RAW settings that I apply to almost all my images. And you just adjust based on the image that you've taken, whether the white balance is different, or the color tones are different, or the background is different, and so on. But this is where I'd like to be when I start working on an image like that. On to the next.